Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, after a year of conflict, Ethiopia is still mired in unrest. The troubled anniversary comes as the US Special Envoy for the region heads to the country as international calls for an end to hostilities grows. Also, the ANC slips below 50% support for the first time as frustrated South African voters turn away from the party in municipal elections. It's a bad look in the run-up to 2024 general elections. And I'm humble and grateful. South African playwright and novelist Damon Galgut wins the 2021 Booker Prize for his novel, The Promise. But first, it's been a year since Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed triggered a civil war by sending in troops to the northern region of Tigray after local TPLF forces seized military bases there. The country is still mired in conflict. Thousands have been killed, 2 million forced from their homes, around 400,000 face famine, and both sides are accused of atrocities. The government's been accused of deliberately blocking aid to Tigray, and fears of a rebel advance towards the capital has prompted a state of emergency, enabling sweeping powers of detention and military conscription. The troubled anniversary comes as the US Special Envoy for the region headed to Ethiopia. Washington's amongst the numerous international voices calling for all parties to back down. But with hostilities expanding, that doesn't seem likely. Maria Gerth-Nicolescu tells us more.
Jeffrey Feltman is tasked with a difficult mission, one that has failed every time so far since the beginning of this war. There is increasing international pressure to find a negotiated settlement to the conflict, which has left thousands dead and displaced almost 3 million. But when we look at what's happening on the ground, it does not seem like any party to the conflict is willing to step away from their military targets. On Thursday, buses full of soldiers were leaving the capital towards the north, where Tigrayan and Oromo rebels are said to be joining forces and envisioning an advance to Addis Ababa. So far, they are still over 300 kilometers away from the city. Tigrayan forces are trying to advance east towards the road leading from Djibouti to Addis Ababa. The conflict has definitely taken another dimension as of last weekend, when Tigrayan rebels secured major towns in the Amhara region. They started taking control of parts of Amhara last July and said the move is a response to a humanitarian blockade imposed on Tigray by the government. But Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said the TPLF had terrorist agendas and that his forces would soon secure victory. Civilians are continuing to join the battle after a call to arms by the Ethiopian government. The Oromo Liberation Army, which is now fighting alongside Tigrayan forces, said it was a matter of months, if not weeks, before the rebel groups would reach the capital. Whether this goal is achievable in the near future and whether this priority is really shared by Tigrayan forces remains to be seen.
Maria Gerth-Nicolescu there for us. Now, any further escalation of the Ethiopian conflict could have regional implications. Kenya's president, who's also Africa's representative at the UN Security Council, has said that he's disturbed by how little political dialogue there's been possible between the warring sides. Their fears spillover from the unrest could have devastating effects in the Horn of Africa. Our correspondent in Nairobi has more.
One of President Kenyatta's main messages for Ethiopia was that despite the deep-seated origin of the conflict, it did not justify the deaths, displacement, and extended warfare that have come as a result. Now, Kenya has tightened its security measures along its border with Ethiopia, with police spokesman Bruno Shioso urging Kenyans to stay on alert and report undocumented immigrants. Now, Ethiopia's stability is important for Kenya because the two countries retain strong trade ties and have cooperated in the past in peacekeeping efforts within the region. In Sudan, particularly, Ethiopia played a critical role in its transition into a democracy, which is now in jeopardy after the military takeover last month. In Somalia, Ethiopia sent troops to stabilize the situation. However, those troops had to be reduced due to the protracted nature of the ongoing conflict in Ethiopia. Now, many leaders within the region are concerned about the situation, and President Museveni has called for a meeting of East African leaders on November 16th to discuss the ongoing conflict.
In other news, the death toll from the high-rise building that collapsed in Lagos on Monday has risen to 36. Hopes are fading of finding any more survivors amongst the dozens who were trapped inside when it went down. A panel of engineers, architects and town planners have been given a month to investigate the cause of the collapse. Now, some island states are particularly at risk of rising sea levels and say that they've been struggling to be heard at the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow. The leader of the Seychelles has said that wealthier nations have to step up their game in supporting struggling island nations. In Mauritius, sea levels are rising so quickly that there are fears that all of its beaches could be gone in just 50 years.
Taken aback by the rise of sea levels, Mauritius made a drastic choice to build walls on its coastline.
Up to 10 meters of the green spaces have been eaten up by the sea.
In Mauritius, the weather was not like this before. There was winter and summer. Now the winter is longer and the sea is much more rough.
These major building works started 3 years ago to protect 21 vulnerable areas. Here, at Rivière des Galets, hundreds of families need an urgent response. According to the United Nations Office for Risk Reduction, the sea level is increasing 5.6 millimeters per year in Mauritius, almost twice the world average.
This work has become an emergency for Mauritius. If we do nothing in 50 years, we will lose all our beaches. This is why this work is necessary, as tourism is central to our economy.
In the last 70 years, the temperature of the island has risen by 1.39 degrees, and 20% of the Mauritian population live in coastal regions.
I see that the sea keeps getting closer. Before it was not like that. The water is now reaching my little terrace. I hear that in the future, the only 3 families who live here will have to vacate this area.
According to local scientists, up to 80,000 inhabitants could be displaced in the coming decades.
There are many places across the island where people are going to be forced to move. For example, we have Rivière des Galets, we have Saint-Martin, and these people can be qualified as climate refugees.
In this village, a refuge centre has already been built. It's equipped with a warning system to deal with any imminent danger from the sea.
Well, so South Africa's ANC suffered historic losses in municipal elections. For the first time, it took less than 50% of the vote. The electorate has clearly grown increasingly frustrated over corruption, and the results don't bode well for 2024 general elections. Nadine Theron has more.
The African National Congress has for the first time in its history received less than 50% of the national vote in South Africa. With only 46% of South Africans' support, this is a wake-up call for the ruling party and a clear sign that people are tired of waiting for the promises of 1994 to be fulfilled. In another historic first, the overall majority of South Africans didn't cast the vote at all. Only 46% of registered voters actually voted, and that is less than a quarter of the national population. The official opposition, the Democratic Alliance, also lost some support since their first and only black leader, Mmusi Maimane, left the party. The ambitious economic freedom fighters' support did indeed grow, but only by a bit more than 2 percentage points. The big winner in these elections is the former Johannesburg mayor and the Black Like Me founder Herman Mashaba's Action SA. Mashaba left the Democratic Alliance 2 years ago, and his brand new party got 2% of the national vote, and 16% of Johannesburg voted for him. Most of South Africa's big cities won't be governed outright by one political party. 1 in 5 municipalities will be governed in a coalition.
Nadine Theron there for us. And finally, it's been a good week for prize-winning African authors. South African writer Damon Galgut has won the prestigious Booker Prize for his novel The Promise. It's about a white family's reckoning with South Africa's racist history. He's the third South African to win the accolade. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
The Promise by Damon Galgut.
Twice in recent years, South African author Damon Galgut was a Booker Prize finalist. This time he won what is one of the most prestigious literary awards for novels written in English.
This has been a great year for African writing, and I'd like to accept this on behalf of all the stories told and untold, the writers heard and unheard from the remarkable continent that I'm part of. Please keep listening to us. There's a lot more to come.
It has indeed been a wonderful year for African writers. The Nobel Prize for Literature was awarded to Tanzanian novelist Abdul Razak Gurna. And on Wednesday, France's top literary prize went to Senegalese author Mohamed Bougar Sarr. Galgut grew up near Pretoria. He's 57 and his book is entitled The Promise. It's about a white family's failed commitment to give their black maid her own home. It spans 4 decades from the late apartheid era to Jacob Zuma's presidency. Galgut is the third South African to win the Booker Prize after Nadine Gordimer and J.M. Coetzee, who received the award twice.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks so much for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.